Amy Coulter finishes her shift at a small cafe. Her black, wavy hair is pulled back into a ponytail, her hands smelling of dish soap. She's tired, but happy. She got paid today. That means in 2 months, she'll have saved up for a deposit on a tiny room. Her room. She goes outside. The evening air is cool. Next to her cheap car is a black car. Its windows are too dark. 2 men in formal suits are standing nearby. Amy's heart skips a beat. She recognizes one of them. Mr. Kim. He came to the orphanage a few years ago. Checked something. He looked at all the children, not like a person, but like an accountant looking at numbers. Ms. Coulter, Mr. Kim says, his voice flat, emotionless. We need to talk. I have things to do, Amy tries to say, but her voice sounds weak. It won't take long. Let's go. They take her not to a cafe, but to a small private club across the street. It's quiet, empty, expensive. Amy has never been to such a place. Her cheap coat seems out of place here. They sit in a private room. Mr. Kim sits opposite. His companion stands by the door. The situation is simple, Mr. Kim begins, not looking her in the eye. He adjusts his glasses. My employer, Mr. Jong Hansel, needs a wife. You fit the bill. Amy looks at him, not understanding. You're young, you have no family, no connections, no complicated past. You're beautiful. And you're manageable. The word manageable cuts into the skin. I'm not getting married, Amy says, her hands shaking under the table. This is not an offer, Ms. Coulter. It is an information. You can't force me. It's illegal. Mr. Kim looks up at her for the first time. There's no malice in his eyes, just a cold statement of fact, like a table. We can. Your friend, Lisa. Morton. She works at a salon now, right? She had some minor run-ins with the law in her youth. Hair dye she borrowed from a previous employer. The case was closed, but the documents remain. We can reopen it, add new details. Her career will be over. It will be very difficult for her. Amy feels the floor shift beneath her. Lisa, the only person from the shelter who hasn't abandoned her, who shared her food with her when Amy was new, who now calls her every week. Why does he need me? Amy breathes out. That's none of your business. Your job is to show up at City Hall on the appointed day, sign the papers, and play your part. That's all. What if I refuse? Then Lisa will have problems. Then you'll lose your job. Your car will be bought with debts you don't have. You'll be back in the system you barely escaped. And in the end, you'll still sign those papers, but without any respect from us. He places a thin folder on the table. All the conditions are here. You will be given a separate room. Clothing. Maintenance. You will perform social duties when required. You will not have to work. This is more profitable than your current life. Amy looks at the folder as if it were a poisonous snake. She sees not freedom from work, but a gilded cage. When? She asks quietly. In 3 days. You will be prepared. She doesn't remember leaving the club or getting into her car. She sits and stares into the dark glass. She sees her reflection in it, the girl who fought for every step her entire life. And now this step has been decided for her. Amy isn't going home. She's going to Lisa's. Liza lives in a small but cozy apartment. Her hairdressing diplomas and brightly colored paintings, which she loves to buy at flea markets, adorn the walls. Amy, what a surprise! Lisa hugs her. She smells like hair dye and cookies. Amy can't speak. She just stands in the middle of the room, shaking. Lisa's smile fades. Amy tells everything. About Mr. Kim. About Hansel. About the threat. Liza is silent. Then she sits down on the sofa, her face turning ashen. That old paint thing, she whispers. I thought everyone forgot. They haven't forgotten. They've found it. They're using you to get to me. We'll go to the police, Lisa says, but there's no faith in her voice. Who? Did you hear the name? John Hansel. Even I heard it. He's not just a rich man. He has connections. Our story against his story? They'll destroy us. They sit in silence. The room smells of comfort and safety that no longer exists. I won't let you do this, Lisa says. We'll run away. Somewhere. Where to? I have some money. You have a loan on this apartment. They'll find us. They specifically chose me because I have no one. Except you. They know how to put pressure on me. Amy looks at her friend. At her hands, skillful and creative, creating beauty. She remembers how Lisa dreamed of opening her own salon, how she was already looking for a location. If I refuse, they'll break you, Amy says. Her voice is firm now. Her insides are frozen. You'll lose your license. Your reputation. We'll be on the run for the rest of our lives. And if I agree, you will sell your life. I'll buy your safety. And mine. In a sense. He has money. He has power. If I keep quiet, if I follow his rules, maybe I won't feel so bad. Maybe this is just a formality. She says this to calm Lisa down, but she doesn't believe a word of it. Lisa is crying. She hugs Amy. Forgive me for my stupid mistake. Not because of you, because of them, Amy says. She leaves late. Before leaving, she leaves Liza all her cash. Just in case, she says. Amy gets into the car. She's no longer crying. There's emptiness and coldness inside. She makes a decision. It's not a choice. It's surrender. But she surrenders to protect the only person she cares about. The next day, Amy is picked up. Two women help her pack her meager belongings. They look at her clothes with a touch of pity. They take her to a beauty salon. They style her hair, do her makeup, and do her nails. Everything is quick, professional, and without unnecessary conversation. Then, to the store. They choose a dress for the ceremony. Simple, formal, cream-colored. Mr. Hansel prefers understatement, the consultant says. That evening, she's taken to a tall building in the city's business district. The elevator goes all the way to the top. She's shown into a large office. The floor is dark wood. Huge windows overlook the city at night. The room is bare, and he sits at a massive table. Chan Han-sol. Amy had seen him in a photo she'd been shown briefly, but the photo didn't convey his presence. He really is handsome. Smooth features, black, perfectly styled hair, broad shoulders under a dark jacket. He looks athletic, strong, but he sits in a wheelchair. It's not a medical one, but a modern, expensive black one, almost part of the interior. He doesn't get up. He looks up at her. His eyes are dark, almost black. They glide over her from head to toe. This isn't a man's gaze on a woman. It's an expert's gaze on a product. He evaluates the quality of her dress, her hairstyle, her posture, and it seems he settles on satisfactory. Amy pauses at the door. She feels like she's being auctioned off. Come here, he says. His voice is low, calm, and unaccented. She takes a few steps and stops in front of the table. He continues to look at her. For a minute. 2. The room is quiet. Only the distant hum of the city can be heard. Do you know the terms? He asks finally. She nods. Okay, Mr. Kim will take care of everything. If you have any questions, ask him. And he looks down at the papers in front of him. The conversation is over. She no longer exists in his field of vision. The guard at the door gently touches her elbow, indicating the exit. Amy turns and leaves. She feels his cold, indifferent gaze on her back all the way to the elevator. The wedding is scheduled for the morning. Amy spends the night at the hotel. She doesn't sleep. She stares at the ceiling. In the morning, she's taken to the mayor's office. She's wearing a simple dress and carrying a small bag. She feels like she's being taken to her execution. The ceremony hall is empty, except for Mr. Kim, 2 witnesses she sees for the first time, and the official, and him. Hansel is wearing a dark suit. He sits in his chair next to the desk. Even here, he looks like a boss at a business meeting. No music, no flowers, no guests, not even a photographer. The official mutters the usual words. His voice is monotonous. Hansel stares into space, his face a stony mask. Amy repeats the words mechanically, her voice echoing. It's time for signatures. She sees her name next to his. Toi, on Chan Hansol. Amy Coulter. That's it. Done. The official hands them a document. Hansel takes it, glances at it, and nods to Mr. Kim. No kiss. No congratulations. Not even a glance. He turns the chair to leave. As he passes Amy, he stops. Without turning his head, he speaks clearly and quietly, so only she can hear. Do your job. Don't interfere in my affairs. And he drives away, leaving her standing in the middle of the empty hall with a piece of paper in her hands, which is now called a marriage certificate. Mr. Kim approaches her. Congratulations, Mrs. Jong. Now let's go. She's being driven not to a hotel, but to another part of the city, to a luxury residential complex by the river. The car pulls into an underground parking garage. The elevator opens directly into the penthouse's hallway. The space is enormous. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything is in shades of gray, white, and black. Clean, expensive, lifeless. Like a page from a design magazine where no one lives. An elderly woman in a formal dress greets them in the hallway. This is Mrs. A, the housekeeper, Mr. Keene introduces. Mrs. A nods without smiling. Her gaze is quick and appraising. Mr. Hansel is busy right now. He asked you to settle in. Mrs. An will show you to your room and explain the rules. Rules. This word is heard again. Mrs. A leads her down a long corridor. The floor is silent. The carpet muffles her footsteps. She opens the door. This is your apartment. The room is large, with its own bathroom and walk-in closet. Pajamas and a robe are already on the bed. Everything is new, with tags. Everything is in neutral pastel colors. Nothing bright. It's as if it was prepared not for a person, but for a quiet, inconspicuous guest. Breakfast is served from 7 to 9 in the dining hall. Lunch is at 1. Dinner is at 8. If you don't show up, the food will be removed, Mrs. An says evenly. The second floor, the east wing, and Mr. Hansel's office are off-limits to you. Guests may only be received with permission from Mr. Hansel or Mr. Kim. Your personal purchases will be delivered. Mr. Kim approves the list. She pronounces it like a memorized text. Where is Mr. Hansel? Amy asks cautiously. He's in his office. He doesn't like to be disturbed. Mrs. A leaves, closing the door behind her. Amy stands in the middle of someone else's beautiful room. She goes to the window. The view is stunning. The whole city is in the palm of her hand. The river, the lights, the traffic. She looks at this view and feels like she's in the most beautiful prison in the world. She's Mrs. Jung. She has a husband she doesn't know who treated her like a thing. She has a house in which she's not allowed into half the rooms, and there are rules she must follow. She turns away from the window. Her reflection in the dark glass looks ghostly, a lonely figure in an empty, shining space. The first day of her married life is coming to an end. It was joyless, and she fears it will always be this way. The morning begins not with the alarm clock ringing, but with a quiet knock on the door. Amy wakes up in a strange bed, and it takes her a few seconds to remember where she is. A young maid in a strict uniform enters the door. She holds a silver tray with breakfast and a thin envelope made of thick paper. Good morning, Mrs. Joan. Mr. Hansel has already finished breakfast and is getting down to business. He asked me to give you this. The girl places the tray on the table by the window and hands Amy an envelope. Amy takes it. The envelope is unsealed. Inside is a sheet of paper with clear typewritten text titled Internal Regulations. She runs her eyes over the items. The list is long and detailed. Breakfast, 7 to 9. Lunch, 13. Dinner, 20, in the cafeteria. Lateness is not accepted. Personal calls are allowed only from private quarters. Telephone lines in the office and conference room are monitored for security purposes. Entry to the following areas is strictly prohibited. Mr. Hansel's office, West Wing, second floor, the meeting room next to it, the technical floor, and the wine cellar. Departures from the residence must be planned 24 hours in advance with Mr. Kim to arrange security. Guests are admitted only with written or verbal approval from Mr. Hansel's. Your staff isn't your conversation partner. Don't distract them from their work with questions, and so on. Each rule emphasized one thing. You live here, but you're not the owner. You're a guest with special conditions. Amy places the sheet of paper on the table. The food on the tray looks perfect. Fresh fruit, yogurt, a croissant. She has no appetite. She dresses in one of the simple but high-quality clothes they bought for her and decides to take a look around. She leaves her room and walks slowly down the long hallway. The house is quiet, except for a muffled voice somewhere in the distance, perhaps coming from Hansel's office door. She goes down to the living room. Sunlight streams through the huge windows. Everything is spotlessly clean. She carefully touches the spines of the books on the shelf. Classics, business books, expensive art albums, nothing personal. Suddenly, her examination is interrupted by a voice. Not Hansel's, someone else's, loud and tense. It comes from behind the half-open door into the small hallway next to the office. Amy freezes. She doesn't mean to eavesdrop, but her voice sounds too loud and angry. Boss, that was foolish! We're losing face! A male voice shouts. There's no answer. Only Hansel's low, calm voice is saying something, but the words are inaudible. Amy takes an involuntary step forward, toward the arched passage leading into the hall. From there, she can see the edge of the room. She sees Hansel. He's sitting in his chair, facing a tall, sweaty man in an expensive but wrinkled suit. The man's face is red with anger. You can't just push me aside. I've been... Hansel raises his hand. One gesture, and the man falls silent, as if his air had been cut off. Hansel's face is absolutely calm. Not a trace of anger, but there's ice in his eyes. He speaks quietly, slowly. Amy only hears fragments. Betrayed trust. Not a mistake, but a choice. Consequences. The man starts to say something, making excuses, his voice breaking. Hansel listens for a second, then makes another slight gesture with his hand. Two guards appear from the shadows, from the wall. They don't grab the man, but simply stand at either side of him, blocking his path. Your accounts are frozen, Hansel says, his voice clear now. It sounds cold and final. The apartment is no longer yours. You're leaving town today. If I hear your name after dawn tomorrow, the consequences will not be financial. Do you understand? The man looks like he's about to burst into tears from rage and fear. He tries to shout another sentence, but Hansel has already turned his chair, demonstratively showing his back. The conversation is over. The guards gently but firmly take the man by the elbows and lead him out through the side exit. Amy jumps back from the arched doorway, pressing herself against the wall. Her heart is pounding. She just watched her husband destroy a man's life in a matter of minutes, without shouting, without fighting, with cold calculation and power. The word disabled now seems absurd and inappropriate. This isn't a helpless man sitting in this chair. This is a master who knows how to destroy. She crept back to her room, trying not to make any noise. She had just broken the no eavesdropping rule, and what she heard filled her with a chilling fear. Fear keeps her confined to her room until lunchtime. She goes out to the dining room at exactly 1 o'clock. Hansel is there. He's sitting at the head of the table, reading something on a tablet. He nods to her when she enters and gestures to the seat to his right. Not a word. They eat in complete silence. Soup, vegetable rissoles. Everything is perfect. Amy feels every sip catch in her throat under his silent presence. Suddenly, a lively, feminine, insistent voice is heard in the hallway. Mrs. A says something softly, but firmly in response. The voice grows louder. The door to the dining room swings open. A woman enters the room. She is incredibly beautiful, dressed with impeccable, expensive simplicity. Her face expresses a mixture of anger and contempt. She ignores Mrs. An, who tries to stop her, and her gaze immediately falls on Amy. So here it is, the woman says, her voice ringing like ice. A new toy, Hansel. You found a replacement quickly. Hansel slowly puts down his tablet. His face is expressionless. Sophie, you weren't invited. I don't need an invitation to your house. Who is she? The woman, Sophie, points a long, manicured finger at Amy. Amy sits paralyzed. She feels the blood drain from her face. This is my wife, Amy, Hansel says evenly. Amy, this is Sophie Yang, business partner. Wife? Sophie lets out a short, sharp sound, like a laugh, but there's no humor in it. You married that nobody? That orphan they dug up from some orphanage? Is this a joke? Are you trying to humiliate me? Her words cut like blades. Amy stares at her plate, feeling the heat of shame spread across her cheeks. She wants to disappear into the ground. That's enough, Sophie. Hansel's voice doesn't rise, but it takes on a steely edge. He turns his chair to look directly at her. You're overstepping your bounds. Apologize. Apologize? To her? Are you crazy? Do you know what everyone thinks? That you married a servant because, She casts a venomous glance at his chair, leaving the sentence unfinished. A silence falls over the room. Dangerously, thickly, Hansel stares at Sophie for a few seconds. Then his gaze slides to Amy, who still can't look up. Then he returns to Sophie. Come out, he says quietly. What? Get out of my house, now. And don't come back until you learn to respect my family. Our business relationship is suspended. Mr. Kim will contact your people to discuss disengaging from our joint projects. Sophie's face contorts with shock and rage. She doesn't seem to believe her ears. You're breaking the contract because of her? I'm terminating my contract due to disrespect. The decision has been made. He picks up the tablet again, signaling that the conversation is over. Sophie stands, breathing heavily. She gives Amy a look so full of hatred that Amy cringes inwardly. Then she turns abruptly and walks out, slamming the door. The dining room is quiet again. Amy slowly looks up. She sees Hansel's profile. He seems unperturbed. He just defended her. For her sake, he went into conflict with a powerful woman. Something stirred faintly inside Amy. Maybe all was not lost. Maybe there was something in him. Don't make things difficult for me, he says suddenly, still looking straight ahead, not turning to face her. His voice is cold and businesslike again. Such scenes waste time and energy. In the future, avoid contact with such people. and that weak sapling of hope within her freezes and dies. He didn't protect her. He protected his property, his decision, his authority. She is part of his plan, and attacking her is a challenge to him, and nothing more. He pushes his plate away. I need to work. Andy leaves the dining room, leaving her alone with her unfinished dinner and a bitter feeling in her soul. After dinner, Amy wanders the house like a ghost, yearning for a corner free from this oppressive sense of alien, cold luxury. On the second floor, at the far end of a hallway she recalled from the list as not being off limits, she notices a door. It's different from the others. It's wooden, solid, without modern hardware. It has an old but sturdy lock. Amy carefully touches the handle. The door is locked. She peers closer. There's no dust around the crack, meaning the door is occasionally used or cleaned. But this doesn't look like an office or a storage room. She goes downstairs and finds Mrs. A in the living room, checking the cleanliness of the windows. Mrs. Ann, excuse me, Amy begins. What's the room on the second floor, at the end of the east corridor? The one with the wooden door? Mrs. A's face immediately becomes closed. She looks away. These are private quarters, Mrs. Zhang. They are not necessary. But what's there? The family's personal belongings are kept there. It's best not to ask about it. And don't approach that door. Mr. Hansel is very strict about that. And with a quick bow, Mrs. An leaves, cutting off the conversation. Later, at dinner, which Hansel again does not share with her, he eats in the study. Amy asks the young maid who brings dessert. Oh, that room. The girl immediately falls silent and looks around, as if afraid she'll be overheard. Best not to inquire, Mrs. Zhang. There's a spirit of the past in there. No one enters without the boss's personal permission. Not even Mr. Kim. The forbidden room now beckons her even more. What could be there that even she, his wife, is forbidden to see? What past is he so carefully concealing? The next day, Amy decides to go out into the small courtyard garden on the complex's grounds. She needed permission to go, but she did so through Mrs. A, following the rules. The garden is well kept and quiet. She sits on a bench, closing her eyes, trying to imagine that she's simply in the park, that she has an ordinary life. Suddenly she hears voices. They come from behind a tall hedge. Two men, apparently Hansel's assistants or guards, are smoking and talking. They don't see her. I still don't understand this move, says one, a bit hoarsely. Marrying an African-American woman without a clan, without a tribe. It's a blow to your reputation in the eyes of the elders. You don't understand anything, replies the second younger one. That's the genius of it. The elders are furious, yes. The rivals are confused. They expected him to marry Sophie Yan or someone from the Pak clan to strengthen the alliance. But he's chosen a completely neutral piece, a draw. But why? To show he's not beholden to anyone, that his strength lies within himself, not in marriages. It's a sign of independence. And also, Amy's voice deepens, and she freezes. They say old Zhang, my father, before he had that accident, arranged for his son to marry Li and Sunho's daughter. You know, that old snake from the south. Hansel always hated those arrangements. This marriage is his way of saying no to them all, and spitting on the grave of his father, who wanted to control him even after, well, you know. So she's just a shield? A decoy? For now, yes. A pretty picture for the press when needed. Progressive young boss. And most importantly, she's completely controllable. She has no will of her own, no connections of her own. The perfect pawn. The voices fade. The sound of a lighter is heard. Then the footsteps fade away. Amy sits on the bench, motionless. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, but everything inside her is crumbling. Now everything fell into place. His coldness, his view of her as an object, his protection as the protection of property. She's not human. She's a move in a game, a way to challenge her enemies and her father's memory. The perfect pawn. She stands up. Her legs are weak. She returns to the house, to her beautiful, soulless room. She looks out the window at the same majestic view. Now she knows the truth. She's been living in a gilded cage for a reason. She was bought for a specific role in someone else's war, a role she's not even told about. And the only thing required of her is to be quiet, manageable, and out of her master's business. A pawn on a vast chessboard. And the pawn, as it knows, has no path of its own, only the one chosen for it by others. The words overheard in the garden play in Amy's head like a broken record. The perfect pawn. The shield. The bait. She puts all the facts together. his coldness, his heartless marriage, his world full of enemies and intrigue. He didn't marry her for himself. He married her against someone, against the elders, against his rivals, against his father's memory. What happens to a pawn in a big game? It's sacrificed. It's put in danger as a distraction. It's removed from the board when it's no longer needed. The icy fear she felt when she saw him kill that man is now replaced by a more precise, more personal horror. She's not just locked in a golden cage. She's in a cage that could be thrown at any moment to distract wild animals. She thinks of Sophie Yan, of the hatred in her gaze. If Sophie is the powerful partner he so easily pushed aside, what can she do to get revenge? Strike him where he feels weakest. Her, Amy. And what will Hansel do? Protect her? She remembers his face when he said, "Don't make things difficult for me." She is a difficulty, a pawn that can create problems. A pawn that becomes a problem is disposed of. No, she can't stay here. She has to go. Before she's used in some dangerous plan. Before she's hunted. Amy doesn't sleep all night. She's making a plan. A primitive, desperate one. She's almost out of money. She gave what she had to Lisa. But she does have the card they gave her after the wedding. It's what Mr. Kim called pocket money. She hasn't checked the balance. But even if it's not much, it'll be enough for a bus ride somewhere. She won't take any of the clothes they bought for her. Just her old clothes from the small bag she arrived with. Jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers. She'll be invisible Amy Coulter from the shelter again. In the morning, she behaves as usual. She has breakfast. She pretends to read in the living room. She waits for the activity in the house to die down. Hansel is, as usual, in his office. Mrs. An has gone out on business. At 1 o'clock, when she's noticed most of the security guards are changing and the staff are busy with their own affairs, she goes up to her room, quickly changes, and slips her passport and card into her jeans pocket. Her heart is pounding so loudly she thinks she can hear it throughout the house. She leaves the room and goes not to the main entrance, but to the side exit into the garden, from where she can reach the staff parking lot. It's easier to slip away from there. She's almost on her way to freedom. Her hand reaches for the handle of the heavy door. "Mrs. Chan?" Amy startles and turns around. One of the guards stands near the wall in the shadow of the arch, tall, motionless. She hadn't even noticed him. "Do you need something?" he asks neutrally. I wanted to go for a walk. In the garden," Amy lies, feeling her cheeks burn. The garden is accessed through the living room. This door leads to the utility area. "It's closed to you." "I'm just going to get some air," she insists, trying to open the door. The handle won't budge. It's locked by the electronic lock. The guard steps forward. "Mrs. Chan, please don't make this difficult. The boss doesn't allow you to leave through the service exits or leave the residence without an escort and warning." There's no threat in his voice, just a statement of the rule. But this rule sounds like a sentence. I just want to leave," Amy blurts out, her voice shaking. The guard looks at her emotionlessly. "The boss doesn't allow it." 3 words. Simple and final. She was a prisoner. Handsome, wealthy, but a prisoner nonetheless. Her attempted escape wasn't even an event. She was simply gently stopped at the door. "Please return to your apartments or the main rooms," the guard says, gesturing back into the corridor. Amy turns and walks back, every step a struggle. She's been defeated without even putting up a fight. A knocks on her door. The housekeeper's face expresses nothing but mild disapproval. "Mr. Hansel wants you in his office, right now." Amy feels a chill run through her. This is it, the conversation that will seal her fate. She could be locked up even more tightly, or she doesn't allow herself to think about the or. She follows Mrs. A in. The door to the office is open. Hansel is sitting at his massive desk, staring at his laptop screen. He doesn't look at her when she enters. "Sit down," he says, without taking his eyes off the screen. Amy sits down in the chair opposite, clasping her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. He closes his laptop and finally looks at her. His face is tired, but not angry. "I was informed of your walk to the service exit." Amy is silent. What can she say? "You want to leave," he states. It's not a question. She nods, unable to utter a word. "You can't," he says simply. "Your escape will ruin everything, all plans. It will signal to others that there is weakness here, that this alliance is a sham. It won't just endanger me. It will endanger you. Outside these walls, you will become a target. Anyone who wants to strike me will strike you first. Here, you are protected." Protection from what? From you? From your enemies? I'm just a pawn in your game, she blurts out, her voice a desperate mixture of fear and anger. Hansel looks at her long and hard. Yes, he says finally. The word hits her like a slap. Now, yes, you are a move in a complex game. But a pawn that leaves the board is swept away. A pawn that stays in place and fulfills its role is protected. I cannot allow you to leave. Not now. Your safety right now is directly linked to your position here. Sit quietly, follow the rules. Don't attract unnecessary attention. That is the best protection I can give you. He doesn't say this like a husband begging his wife to stay. He says it like a strategist explaining his position to a soldier on the battlefield. For how long? Amy whispers. How long do I have to sit here? Until the situation changes. Until the threat passes. He opens the laptop again, signaling the end of the conversation. Amy gets up and leaves. She has no choice. He said it bluntly. Staying is being a protected pawn. Leaving is becoming an unprotected target. It's not a choice. It's a trap. The next morning, Amy wakes up feeling heavy and hopeless. She goes into the dining room. In its usual place is more than just a breakfast tray. Next to it sits a large flat cardboard box tied with a silk ribbon. She looks at the box, then at Mrs. A, who watches with a neutral expression. What is this? For you, Mrs. John. From Mr. Hansel. Amy carefully unties the ribbon and opens the lid. Inside, in velvet trays, lies a professional set of artist's paints. Oil paints. Expensive, imported ones with dozens of tubes. Nearby are natural bristle brushes of various sizes, a palette knives, and small jars for linseed oil and thinner. All the best. She'd once seen exactly this set in the window of a specialty store and could only dream of owning it. She freezes, unable to believe it. How did he know? She hadn't told anyone here. At the orphanage, she drew secretly on scraps of paper with stolen pencils and cheap watercolors. It was her only escape, her small, unknown world. Where from? She begins. Mrs. A shrugs. Mr. Hansel was just giving instructions. He said you might get bored. Bored? This isn't a gift from boredom. It's a message. I know things about you haven't told me. I'm watching, I see. But as why? To show off his power? To give her a toy to keep her quiet? Or was there some other meaning to it? She carefully touches the tube of paint. The subtle scent of linseed oil and pigments transports her for a moment to another time, another place. A place where she was free in her imagination. She doesn't understand this man. She doesn't understand him at all. That afternoon, Amy decides to thank him. Not out of politeness, but to look into his eyes when she says it. To try to understand. She approaches the office. The guard at the door, seeing her, nods and steps aside, allowing her to knock. So, is she allowed access? Or has he been given instructions? She knocks. His voice is heard. Come in. Hansel is back at his desk. He's looking not at the screen, but at a large framed painting leaning against the opposite wall. It's a modern abstraction, a play of dark blue, black, and silver. He turns around when she enters. I came to thank you for the paints, Amy says, stopping at the threshold. He nods. I hope they're suitable. They're perfect. How did you know? He looks at her, and for a second, something like a smile flickers in his gaze. I check everything about the people who live in my building. Your shelter file mentioned artistic inclinations. It's simple. A business check. Nothing personal. He turns back to the painting. What do you think? He asks suddenly. Sorry? About the painting. It was sent to me, possibly an attachment. But I don't know anything about that. You're a person with artistic inclinations. What do you think? Amy approaches hesitantly. She looks at the canvas. She sees more than just splashes of color. She sees energy, aggression, hidden in the brushstrokes, an attempt to depict a storm, then painted over with a layer of cold silver. She's angry, she finally says. Underneath the beautiful surface, there's anger and fear. The artist tried to hide it, but it shines through. This is not a good investment. This is a painting with bad energy. She falls silent, afraid she has said too much, too personally. Hansel stares at the painting, then at her. His face is expressionless, but he's looking at her more intently than ever before. Interesting, he finally says. My expert talked about technique and potential cost, not a word about energy. He stares at the painting for another second, then turns back to the table. Thank you. Your opinion was helpful. It's not a compliment, it's a statement of fact. But for Amy, this is the first time she's been spoken to, not as a pawn or a guest, but as a person whose opinion is valuable. She nods and leaves, feeling a strange, vague relief. That evening, the house buzzes with activity. Mr. Kim arrives, and he and Hansel have a long, quiet conversation in the study. Then Hansel leaves, his expression focused and stern. He passes Amy, who is sitting in the living room reading a book. He stops. I need to leave. For a day, maybe two, he says curtly. Don't leave the house, under any circumstances. Listen to Mrs. A in security. If anything happens, call Mr. Kim. You have his number. He doesn't wait for an answer, just nods and drives off towards the hallway, where Kim is already waiting for him. The house seems to freeze after his departure, but it's a tense silence. The guards increase in number. They move more quietly, but watch their surroundings more carefully. Mrs. A walks through the house, checking the locks on the windows. Even the air seems thicker. Amy senses the tension. Something is happening, something that has forced him to leave so quickly, and this something, apparently, poses a threat. The next morning, tensions reach a fever pitch. Amy is eating breakfast alone in the dining room. Suddenly, a sharp, loud sound is heard at the main entrance. Not a doorbell, more like a thud. Then voices. Male, rough, not belonging to Hansol's guards. Mrs. A runs into the dining room, white as a sheet. Mrs. Zhang, please stay here, don't go out. But it's too late. Three men in dark, but not elite clothing, enter the dining room. Their faces are hard and unfriendly. Two of Hansel's guards try to restrain them, but the men simply push them away. They have some kind of paper, which they show. A search warrant, says one of them, the older one. His gaze glides over Amy, settling on her with undisguised curiosity and disdain. Ah, so that's Chan's new wife. Beautiful. Well done, you made the right choice. Amy stands up, pressing herself against the wall. What do you want? We need to find something. Your husband's business papers. He's doing a bad job. Maybe you could help us? The man steps too close. He smells of cheap tobacco and sweat. I don't know anything about his affairs. Let's check. Guys, start with the office. And you, he points at Amy, stay put. The men enter the office. The sounds of furniture being moved, drawers slamming, and paper tearing can be heard. Hansel's guards stand stony-faced, but can do nothing. The warrant is apparently genuine. The elder stands at the doorway of the dining room, keeping an eye on Amy, as if expecting her to run to warn him or hide something. Suddenly, one of the people in the office calls out, Boss! Look! The elder turns away for a second, and at that moment, Amy sees through the open office door. One of the searchers is holding a thin metal box, similar to a glasses case. He opens it. There are no glasses inside. There is a small flash drive and a folded piece of paper with an official seal. The searcher's face lights up with triumph. There it is! I bet these are copies of the contracts with the port. Amy doesn't know what these contracts are, but she sees senior guard Hansol's face contort with impotent rage. This is important. This is why they came. And at that moment, she recalls Hansol's cold voice. Your escape will ruin everything. You're protected here. She recalls his tired face before leaving, and the strange, awkward trust that had flickered between them yesterday when they were talking about the painting. They found what they were looking for. They would leave with it, and they would strike him. The thought flashes through her mind instantly, clearly, and wildly. It's a pawn. But a pawn that remains on the board can sometimes make an unexpected move. The senior searcher turns to enter the office and retrieve the find. His back momentarily obscures the view. Amy doesn't think. She acts. She takes 2 quick steps toward the sideboard where the fruit bowl sits. Her movements are fluid, as if she's simply about to pick up an apple. But her fingers slip past the fruit and grab a small, heavy bronze candlestick. And, as if she'd stumbled awkwardly, she drops it to the floor with a deafening clatter. Everyone starts and turns around at the sound. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to, she exclaims, crouching down to pick up the candlestick, completely blocking the entrance to the office for a couple of seconds. These seconds are enough. From the corner of her eye, she sees how Hansol's senior security guard, having realized her desperate maneuver, instantly snatches the flash drive and the paper from the hands of the stunned searcher and hides them in his bosom, and in their place puts something else that looks like an advertising brochure from a desk drawer. What do you have there? The senior searcher barks, pushing Amy aside and entering the office. Hansol's security guard says calmly, unfolding the paper. Elevator maintenance bills. Interested? The searcher snatches the paper and looks at it, his face turning purple with anger. He glares at his subordinate, who had just been shouting triumph. Idiot! This isn't it! They rummage for another 10 minutes, but their enthusiasm is dampened. They find nothing. Finally, cursing, they leave. The door closes. A deathly silence reigns in the house. Amy stands in the middle of the dining room, shaking like a leaf. She just lied to the people with the warrant. She interfered with Hansel's affairs. She broke the cardinal rule. The senior guard approaches her. His face is still tense. He silently takes a flash drive and a piece of paper from his shirt, looks at them, then at her. Why did you do this? He asks quietly. There's no hostility in his voice, only confusion. Amy doesn't know the answer. She did it on impulse. Out of fear? Out of gratitude for the paints? Out of a vague hope that maybe not everything in the situation is hopeless? He's my husband, she finally breathes out. And it doesn't sound like a statement, but like a weak attempt to convince herself of it. Hansel returns late in the evening. Amy hears his car pull up to the garage and hears his and Mr. Kim's voices, fast and tense. She sits in the living room, trying to read, but the letters dance before her eyes. She saved his documents, but what if he sees it as interference? What if he thinks she's stuck her nose in where it doesn't belong and ruined everything? Hansel enters. He doesn't look at her. His face is pale with fatigue, but his eyes glow with a cold, controlled anger. He is followed by Mr. Kim and the senior security guard, whose name is So. Tell me, all the details, Hansel says curtly, approaching the fireplace. His voice is a blade wrapped in silk. So reports in detail. About the unexpected visit. About the people with the warrant. About their impudence. About the search of the office. And Mrs. John, where was she? Hansel asks, his gaze finally sliding to Amy. There's no gratitude in it, only a suspicious assessment. Mrs. John was in the dining room. They caught her there, says So. He doesn't mention her actions. Not yet. Hansel looks at Amy. Did they talk to you? What did they ask? They asked about your affairs. I said I didn't know anything, Amy answers quietly. And they believed you? Or maybe you showed something? Were you nervous? His questions become more pointed. At that moment, another person enters the room. It's Hansel's assistant, whom Amy had seen a couple of times. Young, ambitious, with a sharp gaze. His name is Jin. He always looked down on Amy. Boss, Jin begins immediately, his voice almost triumphant. While you were gone, I was checking the access logs. Mrs. Zhang tried to leave through the service exit last night, after you left. She was stopped. And today, a search. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? The room freezes. All eyes turn to Amy. Even So looks at her with a new, heavy suspicion. Amy feels her blood run cold. No, I just what? Jin interrupts, stepping forward, his face contorted with righteous anger. You tried to escape. You were stopped, and so you found another way to do harm. Did you call your friends with a warrant, or did you simply leave the door open for spies? What did they promise you? Money? Freedom? I didn't do anything, Amy screams, jumping up. Her voice trembles with hurt and fear. She looks for Hansel, but his face is a stony mask. He's listening. Yesterday she was in your office. You were showing her something, talking, Jin continues, turning to the boss. And today we're raiding it. She's the only one with access. She's the only one with motive. She's here against her will. She hates this place. She hates you. Every word is like a blow. Amy wants to scream that it's not true, but the words stick in her throat. She sees herself again from the outside, a poor orphan, bought and caged. Who would believe she didn't want revenge? Hansel slowly turns his chair to look directly at Jin. Do you have proof? Concrete? The proof is the coincidence and her behavior. She's a stranger here, boss. She'll never be on our side. A tense silence hangs in the room. It seems everyone has already made up their minds. Jin has constructed a logical, terrifying picture of betrayal, and Amy looks like the perfect culprit. Amy looks at their faces, at Hansel's cold disbelief, at Jin's triumph, at the doubt in the other's eyes. She feels the last of her strength draining away. She has lost, and suddenly her gaze falls on So. The senior guard watches everything silently. He doesn't support Jin. He simply waits. This look brings her back to reality, to that moment in the dining room, to the clatter of the candlestick, to the stolen seconds. She takes a deep breath. Her trembling stops. A strange, icy calm appears within her. She doesn't look at Jin. She looks straight at Hansel. Were you looking for something specific in your office? She asks in a quiet but clear voice. Hansel frowns slightly. It's none of your business. Did they find anything? She insists. Jin snorts. What are you talking about? They didn't find anything because, Amy interrupts, turning to face him for the first time. Her voice is firm now. Jin stutters. Because they were unlucky. They were unlucky, Amy repeats. She slowly places her hand in her trouser pocket. Or were they interrupted? She pulls out of her pocket the very same folded piece of paper with the official seal, the very same one that S had hidden, and which she later, after the commotion had died down, quietly took from him, saying she'd better hide it while its owner was away. She takes 2 steps toward Hansol and hands him the paper. Her hand doesn't shake. They found this in a metal box in your desk, she says. Your man, managed to switch it out while I was distracting their superior. They left empty-handed. Hansel takes the paper. He unfolds it. His eyes quickly scan the text. His face doesn't change, but something clicks in the air. Everyone present, even Jin, freezes, realizing they are holding a vital document, one that had just fallen into enemy hands. So finally nods, confirming Amy's words. It's true, boss. Mrs. Zhang created a hindrance. Without her, they would have taken both the paper and the flash drive. I have the flash drive now. A deafening silence falls over the room. Jin stands, his mouth slightly open, triumph giving way to shock and then panic. Hansol slowly places the paper on the table next to him. He looks at Amy for a long moment. His dark eyes study her face, as if seeing her for the first time. He asks finally, one simple question. There's no longer any anger or suspicion in his voice, only deep, genuine bewilderment. Why did you do this? You could have just stood there and watched. You could have even helped them to gain their freedom. Why did you risk it? Everyone waits for her answer. Amy feels the tremors rising again, but this time from the released tension. She glances around the room. She sees the faces of these people, Hansol's world, cold and dangerous, and then she looks at him again. At her husband, at the man who bought her like a thing. Her lips form words that come from deep within, words that she herself does not fully understand. You are my husband, she says quietly, but so clearly that every word is audible. No matter how it all happened, no matter how it all began, I gave my word. At that city hall, maybe for you it was just a piece of paper, but for me, my word is all I have. And if I'm here, in this house, then I'm here, not with them. She doesn't talk about love. She doesn't talk about loyalty. She talks about the simple, almost primitive concept of honor of someone who has nothing else, about choosing a side when you're forced to choose one. Hansol doesn't take his eyes off her. He seems to stop breathing. The stone mask on his face begins to crack, first in his eyes. The icy wall he's built over the years to protect himself suddenly falters. Something incredibly complex appears in his gaze. Shock, respect, shame, and a new intense focus. He turns away from her, slowly turns the chair toward Jin, who is already trying to become invisible against the wall. Jin, Hansol says. His voice is low and dangerous again, but now the danger is directed in a different direction. Boss, I was just thinking about safety, Jin babbles. You were thinking about how to curry favor. You accused an innocent person based on conjecture. You sowed discord in my home when it should be a fortress. You were wrong. In my business, mistakes based on stupidity are worse than mistakes based on malice. Malice can be predicted, stupidity cannot. Hansol makes a slight gesture with his hand. Your powers are revoked. Your accounts are frozen. You have 2 hours to gather your personal belongings and leave the city. If I see you after dawn tomorrow, the consequences will be severe. Out. Jin, pale as death, turns without a word and almost runs out of the room. His career, his influence, all destroyed in an instant. Hansol looks at the others. This matter is closed. Mrs. Jian acted in the family's best interests. Any further gossip will be punished. Everyone is dismissed. Mr. Kim and the others quickly and silently leave the living room, leaving only Amy and Hansol. He looks at her again. There's no longer a wall of ice in his gaze now. There's weariness, complexity, and something else she can't quite place. Thank you, he says simply. And this thank you doesn't sound like a formality from a boss. It sounds heavy, forced, as if he hasn't said the word in a long time. Several days pass. The atmosphere in the house changes. The guards and staff now view Amy not with indifference or suspicion, but with silent respect. Her word husband and her actions have become known. She is no longer an invisible pawn. She is the one who chose a side and proved it with her actions. One day, at dinner, which they eat together at the same table for the first time in a long time, Hansel puts down his fork. There's a reception the day after tomorrow. At a private club. We need to show up together, he says. Then, after a pause, he adds, there will be important people there. Some are friendly, some are not. I can't always be around to distract them, as you put it. He looks at her, assessing her. You've shown you can think quickly. I want you there, not as decoration, as an ally, to hear what I might not, to see what I can't see. Can you handle it? It's not an order, it's an offer. An invitation into his world, not as a decoration, but as a participant. Amy feels a tightening in her chest, not from fear, but from something else, from a challenge, from a trust that must be justified. She nods. I can handle it. The reception takes place in a huge A penthouse with a view of the city. Everyone is wearing tuxedos and evening gowns. Amy is in a simple but elegant dark blue dress she chose herself. She stands next to Hansel, who seems to be the center of gravity in his chair. Some approach with respect, others with obsequiousness, still others with hidden hostility. Amy feels eyes on her everywhere. Who is this new wife of Chan's? What is she like? An important, portly man with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes approaches them. An official, a very influential one. His name is Mr. Pak. Hansel, my friend, glad to see you. And this must be your beautiful wife? His gaze glides over Amy as if she were a piece of furniture. Hansel introduces her politely. Park takes her hand and kisses it in the air, holding it for far too long. Charming, simply charming. I hope our Hansel values such a treasure. Although, of course, it's already difficult for him, running things alone, so to speak. His gaze deliberately drops to Hansel's chair, then rises again to Amy. It's a subtle but venomous insult, disguised as concern. Hansel tenses. Amy senses him preparing to give a cold, measured response that will only escalate the conflict. She remembers his lesson. Don't show weakness, but don't rush into open confrontation unnecessarily either. Before Hansel can say anything, Amy gently, but firmly pulls her hand away and gives Park the most sincere, almost naive smile. Oh, Mr. Park, you're so insightful. Hansel really needs support right now. That's why he's carefully reviewing all his partnerships, to surround himself with only the most reliable people, those he can rely on in any situation. You probably know how important it is to have loyal allies when you take on more responsibility. She says this in a light, almost admiring tone, looking at him with wide eyes, as if he were a wise mentor, but there's a steely hint in her words. Hansel isn't weak, he's strengthening his position, and he's assessing who's reliable and who isn't. And those like Park face a choice. Park's face freezes for a second. His fake smile fades. He looks at Amy, then at Hansel, who, stone-faced, watches the scene with interest. Park realizes his subtle attack has been parried, and he's been put in an awkward position. He lets out something between a chuckle and a cough. Ha! Yes, of course, a wise approach. Oh, my name is… excuse me. And he quickly retreats. Hansel slowly turns his head toward Amy. There's something akin to approval in his eyes. Clever, he says quietly, using exactly that word. The drive back home is silent. The car glides smoothly through the night streets. Amy looks out the window, feeling both tired and strangely excited. She's done it. Suddenly, Hansel says without looking at her, I was wrong about you. I'm sorry. Amy turns around, startled. He's staring straight ahead, his profile outlined in the streetlights. I saw you as a pawn, a vulnerability, a problem. I thought only about how to exploit the situation, how to protect my interests. I didn't see a person. He pauses. You today. And then, with the paper, you didn't act as a pawn. You acted as a partner. You deserve more than rules and prohibitions, more than being used as bait. He turns to face her. In the dim light, his face seems more open, more human than ever. I can't change how it all started. This will always be between us. But I want what comes next to be different. If that's okay with you. Amy looks at him, at this complex, dangerous, beautiful man who became her husband under duress. She thinks of the fear, the hopelessness of those first days, of the way he looked at her like an object, and then of the colors, of the conversation about the painting, of his thank you, of the trust he placed in her today. She doesn't know what will happen next, She doesn't know if she can trust his words, but she knows that for the first time, he's speaking to her as an equal. And this isn't the golden cage she was imprisoned in anymore. This is a door he's opening from the inside. I agree, she says quietly. The car pulls into the underground garage of their home. Their home. Still alien, but perhaps not forever. The days following the appointment pass in a new, unfamiliar atmosphere. Hansel now often invites her to his office to discuss neutral matters, a new painting he's considering buying, a garden plan. He asks her opinion. It's not yet complete trust, but it is respect. One evening after dinner, he rolls up to her chair in the living room. There's something I want to show you, he says. He doesn't use the words should or need. He says want. He leads her to the second floor, to that same far corridor with the wooden door. Amy freezes. The forbidden room. Hansel takes an old-fashioned key from his pocket. He inserts it into the lock and turns it. The latch clicks loudly in the quiet hallway. He pushes the door, and it creaks open. He turns on the light. This is not a cache of weapons or money. This is not a bunker. This is the studio. A large, bright room, bathed in soft light from the north window. But time has stood still here. An unfinished painting sits on the easel, a landscape with a lake and mountains. The paints on the palette are dry and cracked. On the shelves are jars of brushes, tubes of paint, and rolled-up canvases. Photographs hang on the wall. They show a beautiful Korean woman with kind, intelligent eyes and a warm smile. She resembles Hansel. This is my mother's room, Hansel says quietly. He doesn't move in, but pauses at the threshold. She was an artist, not a professional one. This was her refuge. She was happy here. Amy takes a cautious step inside. She smells it. A faint, barely perceptible scent of old wood, linseed oil, and dust. The scent of the past. She approaches the easel, touches the dried paint on the canvas with her fingertips. She died 10 years ago, Hansel says from behind her. His voice is even, but there's a hint of tension in it. I gave orders that nothing here be touched. No cleaning, no taking out. Everything is to remain as it was the last day she worked here. Amy turns and looks at him. He sits in the doorway like a guard, hesitant to cross the line. He's showing her the most painful, most private place in his world, not to shock her, but because he trusts her. They return to the living room. Hansel stares silently into the fireplace, where the fire is not burning. Amy waits. She knows he's about to say something he's never said to anyone before. It wasn't an accident, he begins, so quietly that Amy can barely hear. That accident. The one that left me in this chair and she died. He takes a deep breath. We were driving back from a business meeting. I was driving. It was night, raining. On the highway. Suddenly, a truck came out of the oncoming lane. It didn't try to swerve. It was heading straight for us. I managed to turn the wheel to absorb the impact. It saved the life of my father, who was in the passenger seat. But my mother, she was in the back. And the impact, he falls silent, gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles turn white. The investigators said it was a traffic accident, a tired driver. But that driver disappeared the day after the accident. The truck was stolen. My father, he knew who was behind it. Competitors. An old feud. But he had no proof. He tried to fight it. But his health began to deteriorate after the accident. He died 2 years later. From rage and helplessness, I think. Hansel looks up at Amy. A cold, unquenchable fire burns in his eyes. I stayed. In this chair. With proof that it was murder. In my head, but not in my hands. And with the people who did it. They're still here. They're thriving. They think I'm broken. That I'm not dangerous. They're wrong. Hansel's words hang in the air, heavy and clear. The whole picture finally comes together in Amy's head. His coldness, his rage, hidden beneath a mask of calm. His marriage to her, a nobody. This wasn't just a challenge to the elders, or a way to show independence. They needed your weakness, Amy says quietly, completing the picture herself. A lonely man in a wheelchair, no family, no wife, no children. Easier to break, easier to isolate, easier to convince others that he's an incomplete leader. Hansel nods, not taking his eyes off her. Yes, they tried to pressure me through marriage alliances, through threats. They waited for me to break or make a mistake. My marriage to you, it was needed to close that gap, to show that I have you, that I'm starting my own family, that I'm not alone, that I have something to protect and fight for. It deprived them of one of their main levers of pressure. He looks at her, and there's no secrecy in his gaze now. I used you to cover up my weakness, to buy myself time, to find those who killed my mother and ruined my life. I didn't expect that you would become something more. Amy listens, and there's no anger in her soul. There's understanding. She sees before her not an all-powerful mafia boss, but a man who's been broken but not crushed. A man who lives for one goal, vengeance and justice, and who still stands alone in this struggle. Amy gets up and goes to the window. Night, city lights, her city now, her strange, twisted life. She thinks about herself, about the orphan who fought for every day, who never had a family of her own, a place of her own. She was offered a role in someone else's war, the role of a pawn, bait, a shield. But something changed in those weeks. She saw his pain. She saw the man behind the mask. He confided his deepest secret to her. He said, "I'm sorry." He saw her not as a thing, but as a person, a partner. She turns to face him. "Do you want to find them?" she asks bluntly. "Yes, more than anything in the world. And when you find them, what then? Will you take revenge? And become like them?" Hansel looks at her. "I want justice. The kind that's possible in our world. I want them to answer. For everyone to know what they did. For their power to crumble to dust. For my mother's memory to be pure." There's no bloodthirstiness in his words. There's a cold, ruthless determination. Amy nods slowly. She's making a choice. Not out of fear, not out of duty. She's making it because she sees in his goal something more than mere revenge. She sees an attempt to restore justice in a world where there is almost none. And because he is her family now, no matter how ugly it began. "Then I will help you," she says. Hansel freezes. "This is dangerous. You've already seen what they're capable of. A search is nothing." "I know, but I'm already in it. From the moment I signed the papers at City Hall, I can sit here like a frightened bird in a cage and wait to see how it all ends. Or I can fly, even with clipped wings, but fly close." She comes back and sits across from him. "You taught me the rules of this world. Give me a chance to apply them. Not to be a shadow, to be an ally. A real one." Hansel reluctantly agrees. He begins to include her in certain moments he considers safe. She studies his files, memorizes faces and connections, and learns to read between the lines of conversations. She becomes his eyes and ears in high society, a place he finds harder to penetrate. She feels like she's being watched. The stares on the street become more intense. One day, her car is slightly hit by another car in a shopping center parking lot. The driver apologizes, but there's something wrong in his eyes. Hansel is beefing up her security, but they know the enemy is on the move. The trap snaps shut 3 weeks later. Amy is on her way to a meeting with a designer to choose fabric for reupholstering the living room furniture. It was a small personal assignment, cleared with security. The store has a narrow, half-empty underground parking lot. Vans pull up from both sides, blocking the exit. Men in balaclavas pour out. Amy's two-man security team reacts instantly, but they are stunned with tasers before they can draw their weapons. Her car door opens. Someone grabs her arm, and a heavy, chemical-smelling bag is thrown over her face. She tries to scream, but feels a sting in her neck. The world blurs, sounds fade, and she falls into darkness. Amy comes to in a dark, damp room. It looks like a garage or a warehouse. Her hands are tied behind her back, as are her legs. The bag has been removed. Her head is splitting with pain and the residual anesthesia. Her kidnappers, 3 of them, are sitting in a corner, playing cards. They pay no attention to her, thinking she's just a frightened girl. Amy doesn't panic. The fear is there, cold and sharp, but she pushes it away. She must think. She recalls everything she's learned over the past weeks. Observation, attention to detail. She listens. The rumble of a highway can be heard somewhere in the distance, so they're not far from the city. The room smells of gasoline, oil, and paint? Yes, there's a faint smell of paint. A car repair shop? She looks at her captors. They are professionals, but overconfident. They think she is helpless. This is her chance. Hansel's habits. He always said, any contact with the enemy is a thread. Find it and pull it. And also, I will always find you. Give me a sign. Any sign, but one that only I can understand. What will he understand? What does only he know about her? The idea comes suddenly, bold and desperate. She pretends to lose consciousness, groans weakly, and falls onto her side. The kidnappers glance at her briefly, and one snorts. She's gone. Never mind. Her boss will pay soon, and we'll let her go. Or not. They return to the cards. Amy lies motionless. Her hands are tied behind her back, but her fingers are free. Beside her, on the dirty concrete floor, there are scraps of something, paper, rags, and a piece of broken brick or cinder block. She carefully moves her bound hands, millimeter by millimeter, until her fingers find the sharp edge of a brick. She grabs it. It's heavy and awkward. Now we need to create a sign. What should we draw? What will Hansel understand? And she remembers his mother's studio, an unfinished painting, a lake and mountains, a simple landscape. He showed it to her only once. No one but the two of them knows the details of that painting. With fingers trembling with tension, holding the sharp shard like a pencil, she begins to scratch on the concrete floor next to her. It's not a drawing, but a diagram. A few wavy lines, a lake, a zigzag behind, mountains. It takes an eternity. Every scraping sound seems deafening to her, but the men in the corner, engrossed in the game and convinced of her helplessness, don't hear. She finishes. The sign is ready. It's tiny, almost invisible, unless you know what to look for. But if Hansel is here, he'll see it. He'll understand. She crawls away from the scratched sign, away from it so as not to arouse suspicion, and again feigns unconsciousness, clutching a small, sharp shard of brick in her palm in case she needs to defend herself. Hansel learns of the kidnapping 15 minutes after his men find the stunned guards and the empty car. The cold rage he's kept at bay for years erupts. This isn't the calculated anger of a boss whose property has been damaged. It's the primal, insane rage of a man who's been robbed of what once mattered. He mobilizes all resources. Pressure is applied to informants, cameras are hacked, routes are analyzed. He goes to the scene himself, ignoring warnings. He is unstoppable. 3 hours later, they find an old, abandoned auto repair shop on the outskirts of town. An informant pointed it out as a possible location. They drive up silently, blocking all exits. Hansel doesn't wait in the car. He drives his wheelchair straight to the gate, his face a mask of inhuman coldness and determination. The guards follow him. The assault is swift and merciless. A broken door screams, a brief, brutal skirmish. The kidnappers, caught off guard, don't have time to put up any serious resistance. They are neutralized. Hansel drives inside. His eyes instantly find Amy, sitting in the corner with her legs bound. She's alive, uninjured. He feels something icy and heavy release from his chest. He drives up to her, ignoring the detainees. "Amy," he says hoarsely, cutting the ropes on her legs and arms with his personal knife. "I knew you'd come," she says quietly, her voice shaking, but not from fear, from the tension that has been released. At this moment, one of his men, searching the premises, calls out to him, "Boss, look!" Hansel turns around. The man points to the floor next to where Amy had been sitting. There are scratches on the concrete, in the dust, incomprehensible to others, but not to him. Wavy lines, lake, zigzag, mountains, his mother's painting. He freezes, then slowly turns his head toward Amy. There's more than just relief or gratitude in his eyes. There's shock, deep, all-consuming. She didn't just survive, she thought. She fought. She left him a message only he could understand. She used their shared, deepest secret as a signal. It wasn't calculation. It was trust bordering on madness. And it paid off. He rides up close to her. He doesn't hug her. He takes her hands, still scratched and bruised from the ropes, and squeezes them in his. His hands are shaking too. "Never again," he says through clenched teeth. "I will never let you be in such danger again. You are unimaginable." Amy looks at him, at his face, distorted by the horror and rage he's endured. And she doesn't see a mafia boss, not a strategist. She sees a man who's been on the edge, because of her. "We found them," one of the men says, approaching with a phone in his hand, "following the tracks of these three. These are El and Sunho's men. The very one we were thinking about. An old enemy. The one who may have been behind the accident. Lee Sunho made his move by kidnapping Amy. And he lost, because he underestimated not only Hansel, but her as well." Hansel nods, still holding Amy's hands. His eyes are cold and determined again, but now they're lit by a new fire. "Excellent. Now we have a lead, and a name, and a reason to act." He looks at Amy again. "Are you ready? For real?" She straightens up, despite the fatigue and fear that hasn't yet subsided. She looks at the scratches on the floor, at his face, at their joined hands. They are no longer a husband of convenience and a purchased wife. They are not a boss and a pawn. They are not even just allies. They are a team. connected by a strange, terrible beginning, shared pain, and a mutual trust that has survived fire. And now they have a common enemy and a common goal. Amy squeezes his hands tightly in response. I'm ready.